America and Germany's support of Israel's politics is extremely disturbing and to me frightening, because anytime any government decides to silence the voices of people who oppose government policies, whatever they may be. This reminds me so much of my childhood. My childhood was spent in the first 10 years much the same way as the children of Gaza. I know exactly what they're going through. I know exactly what they're thinking.
Unrest Radio.
Dear listeners, we just listened to the Holocaust survivor Marian Ingram. Very recently, her scheduled speaking tour in Hamburg has been postponed. Her characterization of Germany's pro-Israel policy as disturbing and frightening resonates as we witness ongoing repression silencing Palestine solidarity voices in the German climate. The situation is becoming increasingly alarming. On February 5th, 2024, this year, a film screening of Roadmap to Apartheid organized by the Institute of Ethnology at the University of Münster was cancelled by the authorities. On January 31st, students protested against authoritarian interference by the University of Münster and the state apparatus. They publicly screened and discussed the film Roadmap to Apartheid in the Schloss by occupying the room in response to the event on January 22, when the screening of the same film was postponed. The initial screening was supposed to be organized by the Cine Club of the Institute of Ethnology at the University of Münster. An email from an individual associated with the Council of Jews in NRV raised concerns involving the University Rectorate, the Ministry of Interior of NRV, State Security, and the press. The event was questioned due to links found on platforms considered militant. The screening was rescheduled for February 5th with police and state security presence. After the cancellation of the screening, we spoke with the students of the University of Münster and also with audiences who shared their concerns regarding the censorship of academic freedom.
I was on my way to the screening when I received a message from a friend about the whole event being cancelled, and I was confused but not really surprised since it has happened before. I felt rather frustrated and simply could not understand why university keeps denying students space for discussion about a documentary that was filmed like 12 years ago, and I just thought that's what universities are for.
In my opinion, openly censoring the film and exerting political power in the academic space shows a deep and very deep-rooted fear. But I don't understand why there is this fear and support for the apartheid regime and genocide only in German society. And I don't understand how they relate this to the experience of the Holocaust, when actually the lesson they learned from it should make them not allow such cruelty to be done anywhere in the world. Anyway, this is a medieval insult to students and the university. It's very strange that the university officials do not stand in front of this issue and justify it by saying that we should see what the content of the film is and hear both sides. This conservatism shows that there is no real belief in freedom of speech, and there is nothing of democracy and freedom except show and pretending. However, in corrupt system of capitalism, there is nothing else to expect.
The event of the screening of Roadmap to Apartheid documentary was to be organized initially by the Cinema Club. The Cinema Club is usually organized with students at the forefront, co-organizing, co-moderating, and after its first cancellation, it was completely repackaged by the Institute to become a kind of lecture plus screening, which restores hierarchies and puts staff of the Institute in leadership instead of the students. And this was after baseless claims that it posed some kind of ambiguous anti-Semitic assault. We do not understand how these claims, are related to this particular film, even though, the topic was supposed to be open for discussion, and therefore every kind of opinion would appear eventually in this discussion. The film was also said, the event was said to trigger some kind of a security situation, security concerns, they called it. And, well, naturally, security concerns are not something to be taken lightly, but, nobody explained to the students, to the student body how or what that actually means. Where does the threat come from? The entire way this was handled, with the first cancellation, which they called just a postponement, and then the complete repackaging of this event, and then the second cancellation, is just a very strange series of events which kind of implies in very clear terms that the event was to be cancelled, or that the university would rather cancel this event. These difficult questions and these difficult issues are not going anywhere. These questions and these topics are here to stay. They are being brought up in every kind of social meeting, every kind of chat between people these days, in every academic circle, every academic space. They will keep coming up, and people will be allowed about saying their academic and political opinions. Just providing the space for that in the context of the institute, of an academic institution, that's very important to keep, because if we're going to stop locking these spaces on loud, clear ideas, then, what is the space for?
Cancelling a film screening out of fear describes the times we are living in perfectly. There is no space for dialogue left, and for an international student, finding a safe, open spaces are especially challenging. We are forced to come to terms that there is no support for those who aren't compliant, and that the only way to ensure safety during a dialogue is by cancelling the dialogue altogether.
Especially if these academic institutions deal with, anthropology or ethnology, then these issues should particularly be discussed in this space. They should not be avoided. We should not look the other way, especially when there's repression involved, especially when there are clear attempts to silence voices involved. The Institute's duty is to fight with the students, not against them, because this actually jeopardizes its own integrity.
I have to say that this whole situation and the whole story and everything, every detail in it, they show some very shameless and spineless behavior from some of the authorities. I don't know who, what and why, but this is what I feel. It is very, very ironic to see that in the first world, in Germany, in one of the most advanced nations in the world, a country that has produced so much philosophy and much texts on many subjects, can take such an action. It is really, really absurd how twisted things have become in Germany.
It is shameful to the least and disappointing to the max that the second time the screening of the film Road to Apartheid was cancelled at the campus. It's failure of the management to protect student rights to debate and use their space the way they want to use it, or is it really a signal that some student voices are protected and heard but not the others, and it is not a welcoming space for all students anymore, and that's very, very shameful on the part of management, university management, to not to be able to protect student rights.
From the perspective of me and many other diverse origin people in this country, or Ausländer as they call us, Germany is merely shirking its responsibility. It's shirking its historical responsibility. It's not being anti-racist. It's not being anti-fascist. Racism and fascism and neo-Nazism and all associated forms of bigotry, they run rampant in this country. The same people who are the real anti-Semites, they are the real Islamophobes as well, among all other forms of bigotry that they have. By accusing friendly people of such big terms, it is very absurd.
I would say that my feelings could be summarized by the expression disappointed but not surprised, because from one side I feel nauseous, but I think that unfortunately I'm also getting used to this kind of shit, and yeah, I'm so disillusioned towards, academia and institutions. And I mean, if it's true as that Palestine is, a sort of moral litmus test, I think that most of the people who are supposed to guide us are failing it. And yeah, but I also don't want to give too much space to frustration and other negative feelings, because we need to go on and fighting for justice, freedom of speech, and for the Palestinian cause, and that's it.
To me, it sounds really ridiculous that they even cancelled an event that they initially planned it with the presence of police. I mean, I'm not shocked anymore, because we all know about this controversial showcase of freedom of speech that West is well known for. But I just have a question, that how are we supposed to trust those Germans who are against AfD and still stay silent about the genocide? Are they aware of the controversy surrounding their commitment to freedom seeking, which seems to exclude all non-white people?
Okay, so I wanted to go there in the first place to educate myself and to have a place for open discussion. And the canceling the screening for the second time now, I feel what the university did there is making it impossible for any kind of self-organization by the students, any kind of independent and critical thinking for ourselves. And yeah, by taking that away from us, by taking away the freedom to educate ourselves on our own terms, what they're doing is trying to force us to play to a narrative that we wanted to challenge by watching the movie and talking about it. And yeah, that's basically censorship, and that's very disturbing and unsettling. Yeah.
The university space has traditionally been where discourse has been permitted, regardless of how the discourse might unfold. And so we've seen in history times when the authorities have placed injunctions upon that right. We're seeing it again now in the case of this film. It was first postponed, then it was threatened to be observed by police and military, and ultimately it was canceled. And I think that the scary thing that is happening is something that has repeated again and again in circumstances in history when the authority or the state has been threatened or afraid that their choices, which right or wrong, are being questioned by its citizenry. In this case, I believe that their decisions to support genocide and warfare are absolutely unfounded and dangerous for not only the people being directly affected by it, but the way that the world is moving right now, the direction in which it's moving. And I'm afraid that if we continue to see such authoritarian and military presence in the universities and in film screenings of, by the way, a movie that is over 10 years old, how are we going to have safe debate for all of the citizens of Germany and the world? And by the way, who's being protected here? Because there is no mention whatsoever of the Arab population. And right now we're seeing a huge increase in anti-Arab and Islamophobic tendencies. And if we continue to silence these voices and threaten military and police presence when those voices try to find a space where they can be heard, those areas are going to continue to increase. So please, let's not do this again.
Here, one significant point worth mentioning is that the educational reform in post-war Germany didn't significantly depart from its pre-war form. Consequently, historical disinformation has been perpetuated for post-war generations, and the education system has been instrumentalized for the political power structure. History reminds us of the collaboration between Nazis and Zionists in the 1930s, which compelled Jews to leave the country. At that time, German policymakers supported Zionism, viewing it as a potential tool of German foreign policy. Therefore, the Nazis sought to utilize Zionism to appease the British. If we connect both aspects, we must evaluate from the perspective of another historical context that many former members of the German government have a Nazi past.